The WNBA is facing its biggest crisis in recent memory, and it has nothing to do with ratings, attendance, or media coverage. Instead, the league's most transformative player, Caitlin Clark, may be contemplating walking away from professional basketball entirely. When Sophie Cunningham recently dropped hints about Clark's uncertain future, it sent shockwaves through the basketball world and raised uncomfortable questions about how the WNBA treats its biggest stars. The foundation of the crisis, Caitlin Clark, entered the WNBA as a generational talent who single-handedly transformed women's basketball. Her college career at Iowa captured national attention in ways the sport had never experienced before. Sold-out arenas, record television ratings, and mainstream media coverage followed wherever she played. When she transitioned to the professional level, fans expected the WNBA to embrace and protect their new golden goose. Instead, what transpired has been a masterclass in organizational mismanagement. Clark has endured relentless physical punishment on the court, inconsistent officiating, and treatment that suggests the league views her more as a target than a treasure. Now, in her second professional season, the very star who was supposed to elevate the entire league finds herself dealing with mysterious injuries and uncertain timelines that have fans questioning whether she'll even return this season. Sophie Cunningham's bombshell comment. Sophie Cunningham, a player known for her outspoken nature and history of league fines, recently made comments that crystallized what many fans and observers have been thinking. When asked about Clark's injury status and potential return, Cunningham's response was telling. She described the situation as day by day and suggested that Clark might already be playing if this weren't the WNBA, implying that the physical nature and competitive depth of the league makes recovery more challenging. More importantly, Cunningham's comments highlighted the uncertainty surrounding Clark's condition. Nobody seems to know when she'll return or if she even wants to return. This lack of transparency has fueled speculation that something deeper is happening behind the scenes. When an active player suggests that the league's biggest star might be better off elsewhere, it's not just gossip. It's a damning indictment of the system. The physical toll and double standards. The treatment Caitlin Clark has received on WNBA courts has been nothing short of alarming. While rough play is expected in professional sports, the consistent targeting of Clark has crossed lines that would be unacceptable for other marquee players. She's been subjected to hard fouls, physical intimidation, and aggressive play that often goes uncalled or lightly penalized. This treatment becomes even more concerning when contrasted with how other players receive officiating protection. The league's inconsistent approach to player safety has created a system where some stars get preferential treatment, while others, particularly Clark, seem to face heightened scrutiny and reduced protection. This double standard hasn't gone unnoticed by fans who see their favorite player getting battered while others receive favorable calls for minimal contact. The physical punishment has taken its toll. Clark's current injury situation, shrouded in vague medical updates and uncertain timelines, represents the culmination of months of inadequate protection. When a player of her caliber and importance to the league's financial health is dealing with mysterious ailments that keep her sidelined indefinitely, it raises serious questions about the WNBA's priorities and competence. The financial reality, perhaps. The most damaging aspect of this entire situation is that Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA nearly as much as the WNBA needs her. The league has experienced unprecedented growth since her arrival. Television ratings have skyrocketed, arenas that once struggled to fill seats now regularly sell out, and merchandise sales have reached new heights. Corporate sponsors who previously showed little interest in women's basketball are now fighting for partnerships and advertising opportunities. Without Clark, these gains disappear overnight. The Indiana Fever, her current team, would return to obscurity. Half-empty arenas would become the norm again, television networks would lose interest, and the casual fans who discovered women's basketball through Clark would likely drift away. The Caitlin Clark effect isn't just a marketing phrase. It's the difference between growth and stagnation for the entire league. Meanwhile, Clark has numerous options that would provide better compensation and treatment. European leagues offer higher salaries, shorter seasons, and often better officiating. Players routinely earn more overseas than in the WNBA, and they're treated with the respect that elite athletes deserve. For someone of Clark's talent and marketability, European opportunities would likely come with unprecedented financial packages and star treatment. Alternative career paths beyond basketball, Clark has shown interest in other pursuits that could prove equally lucrative and far less physically demanding. Her documented love for golf presents an intriguing possibility. Professional golf offers substantial earning potential through prize money, endorsements, and appearance fees. Given Clark's competitive nature and existing fan base, a transition to golf could prove remarkably successful. The sports entertainment and media landscape also presents opportunities. Clark's personality, competitive fire, and existing brand recognition make her an attractive candidate for broadcasting, content creation, or brand partnerships. She could potentially earn more through these ventures while avoiding the physical punishment and organizational dysfunction that currently define her professional basketball experience. These alternatives aren't theoretical. They represent realistic paths that would likely provide better compensation, working conditions, and career longevity than continuing in the WNBA under current circumstances. The mental health factor. The pressure Caitlin Clark faces extends far beyond what happens on the basketball court. She carries expectations that no woman in American sports has ever shouldered. As the face of major brands like Nike, State Farm, and Gatorade, every performance is scrutinized, every comment analyzed, and every decision questioned by millions of fans and critics. This level of attention would be challenging for any athlete, but it becomes particularly difficult when combined with inadequate support from the league itself. When an organization fails to protect its biggest star physically, while simultaneously placing enormous promotional and financial expectations on her shoulders, burnout becomes inevitable. Other elite athletes like Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, and Serena Williams have all reached breaking points where mental health took precedence over competitive achievement. Clark may be approaching a similar crossroads, where the cost of continuing in her current situation outweighs the benefits. Fan response and support. Perhaps most telling about this entire situation is how fans would likely react if Clark decided to leave the WNBA. Rather than criticism or disappointment, the overwhelming response would probably be support and understanding. Fans have watched Clark endure unfair treatment, inconsistent officiating, and organizational incompetence for 2 seasons. They've seen their favorite player get battered while others receive preferential treatment. If Clark announced tomorrow that she was leaving for Europe, golf, or another career path entirely, fans would likely applaud her decision. They would blame the WNBA for failing to protect and properly utilize their biggest asset. This potential fan reaction should terrify league officials, as it indicates that their mismanagement has been so obvious and egregious that losing their biggest star would be seen as justified rather than tragic. League implications and future scenarios. The WNBA finds itself in an impossible position. They've built recent growth around Caitlin Clark's star power, but their treatment of her has created conditions where departure seems increasingly likely. Several scenarios could unfold, none of them particularly favorable for the league. If Clark remains but continues dealing with injuries and uncertain playing time, the league loses momentum and fan engagement gradually declines. If she leaves for European basketball, it creates an embarrassing situation where the WNBA's biggest star found better opportunities elsewhere. If she transitions to another sport or career path entirely, it represents a catastrophic failure. To retain generational talent, the most damaging scenario involves Clark publicly criticizing the league while explaining her departure. Such a situation would expose the WNBA's problems to mainstream media attention and potentially damage the league's reputation permanently. The path forward. For the WNBA to retain Caitlin Clark and avoid long-term damage, significant changes must occur immediately. Player safety protocols need strengthening, particularly regarding star player protection. Officiating consistency must improve, ending the double standards that have characterized Clark's treatment. Medical transparency should increase, providing fans and media with honest updates about player conditions. Most importantly, the league must recognize Clark's value and treat her accordingly. This means ensuring she receives appropriate protection, support, and respect both on and off the court. The WNBA cannot continue taking for granted the player who transformed their entire industry. Conclusion. Sophie Cunningham's recent comments weren't just speculation, they were a warning. The WNBA's biggest star is considering her options, and those options increasingly look more attractive than remaining in a league that has failed to protect and properly support her. The organization that should be building around Caitlin Clark instead finds itself at risk of losing her entirely. The next few months will determine whether the WNBA can correct course and retain the player who single-handedly elevated women's basketball to unprecedented heights. If they fail, the consequences will extend far beyond losing one player. They risk undoing years of growth and returning to the obscurity from which Clark rescued them. The clock is ticking, and the WNBA's response to this crisis will define the league's future. Whether that future includes Caitlin Clark may depend on how quickly and decisively they act to address the problems that Sophie Cunningham dared to voice publicly. The decision that could change everything. As we stand at this crossroads in WNBA history, the weight of what happens next cannot be overstated. Caitlin Clark sits at the center of a storm that she never asked for but must now navigate. The injury, reports continue to be vague. The timeline for her return remains uncertain, and whispers about her future grow louder each day. What started as concerns about player safety has evolved into questions about the very survival of the league's recent momentum. The reality is stark. Caitlin Clark holds all the cards, and the WNBA is playing a losing hand. Every day she remains sidelined, every vague medical update, every day-by-day response from team officials adds fuel to the speculation fire. Fans are no longer just worried about when she'll return. They're genuinely concerned about whether she wants to return at all. The domino effect of departure. If Clark decides to walk away, the consequences will ripple through every aspect of women's professional basketball. Television executives who greenlit expanded WNBA coverage will question their investments. Corporate sponsors who rush to align themselves with the league's newfound popularity will reassess their partnerships. Season ticket holders who bought into the excitement Clark generated will demand refunds and explanations. The Indiana Fever, already struggling with organizational issues, would face an existential crisis. How do you rebuild a franchise when your cornerstone player, the one who sold out arenas and generated national headlines, simply decides the environment isn't worth her time? The answer is devastating. You can't. The Fever would return to being just another struggling WNBA franchise fighting for scraps of attention in a crowded sports landscape. But the damage wouldn't stop in Indianapolis. Every WNBA team has benefited from the Caitlin Clark effect. Road games against the Fever became must-see events. Opposing arenas filled with fans hoping to catch a glimpse of the phenomenon. Television. Ratings spiked across the entire league. Without Clark, those benefits evaporate, leaving teams to face the harsh reality that their own star power might not be enough to maintain current attendance and viewership levels. The international embarrassment. Perhaps most damaging would be the international implications of losing Clark to European basketball. Imagine the headlines: WNBA loses biggest star to overseas league. The optics would be catastrophic. Here's a league that finally found its breakthrough star, only to create conditions so unfavorable that she chose to play thousands of miles away rather than endure another season of inadequate protection and inconsistent treatment. European leagues would roll out red carpets for Clark. Teams would offer unprecedented contracts, star treatment, and the kind of respect the WNBA has failed to provide. She would become the highest-paid women's basketball player in the world, while playing in front of passionate fans who appreciate elite basketball without the drama and dysfunction that has characterized her WNBA experience. The message would be clear. If you want to be treated like a superstar in women's basketball, don't play in America. That's a narrative no professional league should ever have to confront. Yet the WNBA has created exactly those conditions through months of mismanagement and missed opportunities. The final verdict. As Sophie Cunningham's comments continue to reverberate through social media and sports talk shows, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This isn't just about one player's injury or one person's frustration with officiating. This is about whether the WNBA can evolve quickly enough to keep pace with its own success. The league stumbled into greatness when Caitlin Clark arrived. They inherited a generational talent who could sell tickets, generate headlines, and create casual fans out of people who had never watched women's basketball before. Instead of nurturing that gift, they've subjected it to a trial by fire that may ultimately consume both Clark and the momentum she created. The next chapter of this story will be written soon. Either Clark returns healthy, protected, and properly supported, signaling that the WNBA has learned from its mistakes and is ready to build around its biggest asset, or she makes a decision that prioritizes her own well-being over a league that has consistently failed to prioritize her. If that moment comes, if Caitlin Clark announces she's moving on to greener pastures, don't blame her. Blame the system that had everything handed to them on a silver platter and somehow managed to fumble it away. The WNBA's greatest success story might also become its most cautionary tale, all because they forgot the most basic rule of professional sports. Take care of your stars, or watch them shine somewhere else. The clock is ticking, and the entire basketball world is watching. What happens next will define not just Caitlin Clark's career, but the future of women's professional basketball in America.